All right, guys, we are here. It's the rest round. This is Gary Hatchman, Butch Hiles, and we got Mike Dyess. Today we're going to be talking about training partners and just making sure that you have the right partners to push you for what you're looking for in jiu-jitsu. First of all, thanks, Mike, for joining us today, bud.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be here. Appreciate the invite.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got started in mixed martial arts or in jiu-jitsu and combative sports.
I got started. I started off in just jiu-jitsu. I started because a good friend of mine, his cousin, I think Butch knows him. His name's Cornelius, and he was a fighter, and he actually ended up crashing his motorcycle and passing away. And I knew his cousin, and his cousin wanted to start training. So I was like, I'll do it with you. And then he never started training, and I just never left.
It's kind of the way it goes sometimes, isn't it?
It's how it always goes, honestly.
Yeah. Well, how many, on that note too, man, how many people we all started with that, that are left, right? It doesn't, but that kind of brings us to the point of kind of the thing, right? It's like having the right training partner. So somebody that's obviously at the beginning, you don't know what you need exactly. So if they don't stick around, it is what it is. And that's kind of what we're talking about. But this is kind of different. It's like, now you kind of need, what you're looking for, the style of training that you want, the pace you like to roll, the person that pushes you the most, or, whatever that is. So how do you look for that? Or what are you looking for considering on what you're training for? I guess that'd be another thing too, rather versus being ready for a fight, a competition, just doing it for fun,
Well, I think I'll say this from experience, you gain a certain amount of knowledge through just going through it. Because like I've had the worst training partners and I've had really amazing training partners. One thing's for certain, I just feel like no matter what you're training for, the most important thing is just safety, because if I'm hurt or my training partner's hurt, or then nobody gets to train, nobody gets better. And I struggle with that at the beginning of my career. I struggle with that because I had a real bad ego problem. I just wanted, anytime I sparred or anything, it wasn't really an ego thing. It was just, I guess, a certain amount of competitiveness to where I just wanted to. So I would just cream everybody that I could, like, and just keep going. I would try to steam. And then now that I'm a little bit older and I realize, like, well, for one, that makes you a shitty training partner. And then for two, if I'm hurting people A, are less willing to train with me, and B, are not able to train with you if they're hurt. So I think as far as training goes, as long as you're keeping it at a safe level, everybody's a good training partner as long as you can keep it there. But of course, sometimes there's some people who you can't help it. We all know who the people are. I won't say no names, but there's some people, you just can't help it. It's like as soon as you go out there with them, it's immediately like, all right, well, this is what we're doing. But I think that's the most important thing in training partners for me these days, especially now that I'm getting a little bit older. I know you guys are going to be like, you're not that old, but now that I'm getting a little bit older and starting to feel the effects of plenty of years of hard getting punched and kicked and broken, now I'm just like, I just try to keep it as safe as possible as far as for what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say, we've kind of talked about that beforehand, is like, it's easy for things to get escalated. And whether it be MMA or Muay Thai, the nice thing about jiu-jitsu for the most part is you can kind of go hard and everybody's particular, for the most part safe. But when you start adding strikes in, it changes it a little bit. And if you get touched at 50%, then you want to make sure you give it back 50%, sometimes at 55%. And then he wants to give it back to you at 60. And before you know it, you guys are slugging each other. And so, like, because we were talking about, I know you and Hakim have a real good relationship and you guys train together an awful lot. What keeps it from getting too heated? Because even friends, like, I feel it in the gym sometimes where it's like, hey, he touched me and that didn't feel good. And now I want to give him some back. So how do you guys keep it safe?
Well, me and Hakeem have a real love-hate relationship as far as training goes. He probably well, no, there's not probably. He definitely gets me to a level more than anybody else these days. So because we have a certain competitive. I mean, we're not trying to kill each other, of course, because I don't know if you've ever sparred Hakeem, but he's very skilled at what he does. He moves very well. He strikes very well. He's very fluid with everything that he does. And if he would, kick you even 50% in your head, it'd probably knock you out, even as skinny as what he is. But he definitely gets me to a level, and I guess that comes from comfortability with each other because I know where I'm going to be at. He knows where I'm going to be at. He knows what level I'm going to be at. I know what level he's going to be at, and I also know what level he's not going to go past, and he knows what level I'm not going to go past. Because, but we do. Me and him push each other like nobody else. Like nobody else.
It's funny because I was laughing while you're talking, but the reason is I don't know when you talk about Hakeem now, all I think of is when he gets posted all the time raising time to blast his hand at ADCC and everybody makes fun of his skinny legs and those socks.
Socks, yeah, the socks, the socks. He'll never live that down. No matter what, he'll always be the guy with the socks in the jiu-jitsu world, I think.
Yeah, it gets reshared every year about this
Every
time, and
year.
it gets sparks up another thing. And he, anyway, it is pretty funny.
I don't even remember what the hell was on his socks.
Nothing. I think they were just tall black socks up to his knees and just skinny legs, and
He's a,
it
he's a
just
he's
cracked
an
everybody
interesting
up.
character though. He's a,
Yeah,
he's pretty much a genius. If you ever really sit down and like talk to him about like the stuff that he's into, it's really crazy that he even comes in and spars or anything because I mean, he's a hacker. He's a lawyer. He's just into all this stuff that really is really heavily influenced by your brain activity. So why you would want to get hit or punched by anybody else is beyond me. I mean, you're well, I can't remember what you do, but I know you do like something medical in the medical field. I don't know why you guys are getting hit in the head. It's crazy.
no, but it is one of those weird things, especially with Hakeem, is that he's one of those people that you hear a lot about, like Ryan Hall or something like that. They're like the nerdiest guys in the world are the ones that'll kick your ass, right? And
Yeah,
and not to say Hakeem's nerdy or anything, but like,
he's
but I
pretty
think
nerdy.
where he's very intellectual, so nerdy, like that's one of the things that maybe draws him to the more technical aspect of stand up and jujitsu, right? He really enjoys
Yeah,
it, breaking down techniques, and that
yeah,
probably is good for you too, right? Because it's like maybe because I know like when I spar and do, like, I have a general outline of what I do and I know the basics, but like when you hear somebody like that's really nerdy and intellectual, like a John Donaher, the way he would
yeah,
describe something, the way I describe something is night and day, right?
yeah.
And the way
Totally different. Like
you
Paul.
need that, yeah, and he opens your minds to things that you wouldn't think of because he'll I mean, even he'll break down a move that maybe we get it right. Like you take somebody and you grab them in jujitsu and you roll them, but then Donaher knows exactly why that happens, right? Because of the body positioning, the technique, and the leverage, and all that. And then we'll break that down. I'm like, wow, if I could understand those concepts, I could be a lot better at something. So you need people like that in this world that have that little difference than we all have.
Yeah, he's also. I mean, he's definitely my most consistent training partner too.
Mhm.
Even though, I mean, nobody that as far as MMA goes, whenever I'm like really trying to train for a fight or whatever, nobody is as consistent as I am as far as like just making sure that I come every single day to wherever gym I need to go to, whatever but as far as like my training partners go, he's definitely the most consistent, and that's another thing that falls into being a good training partner is just somebody who's consistent, like because if I think that's my biggest handicap being here in Charleston, West Virginia, is just simply because there's not a lot of legitimate mixed martial artists that are consistent. You got all these guys that go and take ass whoopings for $500, $600, but I mean, you also, but you of all people know how consistent to those guys are, and I I've not been as consistent as I usually am because I've been dealing with the other stuff that I've been dealing with, like career wise, stuff like that. But I mean, you know, like there's guys who will show up a week before their fight and say, "Hey Butch, I got to fight on Saturday." You know, for one, you know, you're not going to get any better in a week of training, no matter where you're at. But for two, it's like, well, you could have been training for the last 6 months, and if you would have trained for the last 6 months, I would have had somebody who was here training, you know, mixed martial arts with me for the last 6 months. So then we both could have got better because of that.
Mhm.
You know.
Yeah. No, well, and it's hard to find somebody, period. Like, so you like said, there's not a lot of people like that around here, period. Right? There's just not, and that's
No.
and that's a problem with maybe they would, like, I always try to look for the other side, like, not to knock everybody, but maybe it's because there is nothing to shoot for, and right, like, you also can, meaning that you have to go out of the state. It's different if you could be fighting every weekend. So I think sometimes people start with the right intentions, and then after they've had a hard grind for a few months, they're like, well, where am I going to fight, or what am I going to do? They start finding out the only thing really is tough, man, is I got to travel and I don't have no money. Then all of a sudden it's like the wind gets knocked out of everybody's sails, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
sure there's some of that, but you're right. It's rough. And to that point though, you have to find somebody like that thinks like you, and that's even tougher here, you know? So luckily, you know, Hakeem and yourself found each other, which is great, right? And then it's like,
Such a beautiful love story.
yeah, it is. It's like walking hand on the beach, you know?
It is. I mean, it's a lot more. It's actually a little bit gayer than walking hand on hand on the beach sometimes, but
Yeah.
you know, yeah, oh yeah, it gets going. I don't know how PG I'm supposed to be on here, but
But
you guys knew who you were inviting before you invited him.
you just
let it go. You're fine.
Yeah.
So since we've been talking about what you like and how things worked out, what would be the worst case scenario for you? Obviously, it's somebody that's not very dedicated, kind of cover that, but I mean, you can expand on that, or just what do you think's the worst? Like, if you had to show up and you're like, man, I ain't gonna train with that guy, or this is just not working out. I mean,
Um, I mean, the worst training partner, of course, is the gym bully, and we all know who those guys are. Usually, you could pick them out from the guy that isn't even very good, but just like preys on people who are shitty. You know, that's the worst. Like if I hate training with anybody, it's just the guy that comes in, because most of the time, the guy that's like that um is usually terrible. But you know, a person who is terrible and trains a little bit is still a lot better than a person who's not training at all. And I think that's the worst training partner that I've ever ran into and experienced, is just those guys who just, you know, show up just to try to look cool, look the part, and, you know, put hands on people who ain't got no business even being out there sparring anyways to begin with.
well, yeah, well, on your side, they offer nothing in return, right? Because in
No.
return, it sounds like a person usually that hides from real competition, right? So, you know, that's not a person that's going to train with you effectively, probably anyway, right? But that's why they're a bully,
No.
because the people they can win, and yeah, that's not going to work out.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think, Gary?
Especially if I catch you doing it, because then I have to hit you in the body for sure, hands down. If you ever see me hit anybody hard in the body, it's because they were being an asshole to somebody they shouldn't have been being an asshole to. Almost 90% of the time.
So, so I might be that gym bully when it comes to striking, then, because I like hitting people to the body.
Yeah. It's a control thing. Me and Gary have sparred before, so Gary knows. I keep a high pace. It's not very hard. I don't hit people hard, but I do keep a very high pace, and it's very taxing on your cardio and conditioning. But I don't go hard. Like, and when I was younger, I used to go hard all the time. Like, that was how my mind worked. Like, even when I was rolling, it was never to roll to, like, it was never like I need to roll so I can do this and I can move here and I can get to this position. It was like, I got to roll to submit you. And if I cannot submit you, then I'm losing. And now I don't think like that at all.
Right. And as far as grappling goes, I think I've always been more of just like kind of like methodical about it. I want to know the move. I want to know the technique. I'm not worried about getting tapped, or obviously we all come to win. There's the reason we keep doing jiu-jitsu and showing up at open mats is because we want to get a little competition, a little success. But it was never the win in the gym or at the academy was never paramount. I tell my guys all the time, like, listen, when we're done here, all the medals that are displayed in the academy, those are still mine. Nobody's leaving with a gold medal today. So like, make sure you learn something and you treat your partners right, because we need more people in here. The more people we get in here, the more training partners we have, the better we all get. And so trying to keep people there is important. Now, as far as like striking, and I was talking to Butch before we started here. I don't know what a pro gym is, right? I don't know what it, like, as far as boxing, kickboxing, MMA. I don't know what that environment's like. We've got a day where we're going to Sam's gym in Gloucester, and there's going to be some pros from Parkersburg, I believe, from Powell, Ohio is going to be there. And so our group is going to travel to Gloucester and train there, and we're going to find out what it feels like to be in the ring with pros. And so it's going to be a different experience for us, and I get to see. I don't know what to expect. I have a good idea of what to expect, and I know it's going to be a little bit harder. And 40 years old is a little bit too old to be getting in and trying to find out what striking's about. But I'm curious and I'm excited. So, but I think just overall, just taking care of each other should always be paramount.
Yeah.
Not trying to hurt each other getting in there.
Now, I'm not opposed to hard training or hard sparring. I think that there's a time and a place for it. I think that, if you are, a fighter and you are, training for a fight, I do think that, but there's degrees to it. I've seen probably 3 different spectrums of sparring from the different places that I've gone to. So, and whenever I'm in like fight camp, I travel to other gyms. I go to Ohio, Columbus. I go to other places to get those rounds in with other people. And necessarily people who aren't my friends like Hakeem, who trains with me all the time, and I need him. He's paramount to my success as far as my MMA for sure. So when I travel, most of the time, it's damn. I don't want to say it's a fight, but it gets pretty exciting. I'll say that. But I think if you get in there with somebody who's really, really, really just so much better than you, that they're gonna realize that, engage the situation accordingly. Because I've gone in there with people who were pretty equal skill wise with me, and it was wars. Like it was, we were as soon as the bell rang, they came at me, I came at them. And then I went with a guy when I was in Columbus who was just, he was just so much better than I was at the time. He was just doing whatever he wanted, but nothing was hard. It was, I left the round like I didn't even, I left the round completely healthy, no headache, no nothing, but he beat the hell out of me. He beat the hell out. It was like not even a close round at all, So I think there's those spectrums. But then like even at my other gym, my boxing gym, those guys are warriors. That's how they spar. That's how they've always sparred. It's you go in there, you put your mouthpiece in, and you step between those ropes, and as soon as that bell rings, it's go time. And then I sparred people like Hakeem, who's just he's here to work his technique and to outclass you as opposed to beat you. And that's where me and him kind of butt heads the most, is because he can outclass me, but he can't beat me, because you gotta have a certain amount of gangster about you to do this sport. And when you get to a certain level of skill wise, if you're way up here and I'm down here, I have to do something to catch up with you. And sometimes it's going harder on each other. Sometimes it's picking the pace up. If you can beat me on the perimeter, I got to get inside so I can beat you on the inside. It's just, but there's spectrums to it. And I think that it's good. All 3 spectrums are good, but they all have their time and their place. And most people don't really realize until they really get deep into training and like really where they're like, I'm doing this 6 days a week. You cannot spar hard 6 days a week. You can't do it. I mean, you could. Your brain's gonna be mush. Your body's gonna be destroyed. So it's just time and a place for it. But I think you guys will do fine. I don't think any pro down there will get in there with your new guys and try to hurt them.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And it kind of brings me to another question, because you were talking about being in fight camp, and I know anytime that, I don't compete so much anymore, but when I was competing a lot in jiu-jitsu, and I'm getting ready to maybe start competing again in jiu-jitsu, that if I had something coming up, I would train a little bit harder, just one, to get my cardio up, and to get more of a feel of an actual match. But whenever I didn't have anything going on, I just feel like there's two separate times. When you don't have a match coming up, when you don't have a fight camp, it's kind of like learning time. This is the time that should be focused on gaining new skills, acquiring new techniques, working on what you have as your deficiencies in your game, and trying to tighten up those screws. Because when it's fight time and you're 5 weeks, 6 weeks out, now it's hone everything and then get ready to go to war. And I think, is there a difference in partners that you're choosing for both of those? Obviously,
it's not really a difference in partners. I usually, whenever I have a fight coming up, I usually have, 4 or 5 guys that I call and I say, listen, I got a fight on this day, and I would like you to help me get ready for it. This is what this guy does. This is what he does good. This is what this is the game plan of what I want to work on. It's usually the same guys, but there is a different level of intensity that it gets to. And usually in fight camps, I like to really handicap myself as much as I possibly can. So like I'll put on sauna suits and layers of clothes and weighted clothes, weighted vests, stuff like that to even make my intensity a little bit higher when all that stuff comes off. And of course, it's harder sparring, harder rolling. And a lot of times for me personally, I usually like to be, the guy that everybody rotates in on till I'm gassed. And that's how I've always gauged my intensity level as far as fighting goes. Like I'll have 5 or 6 guys and I'll say, hey, I'm going to go for 45 minutes today. Y'all rotate on me every 5 minutes. And that's just how I always get my intensity to the level of what it is. And now it's to the point with me, like I really don't have to really be super intense about things. I've learned to simmer myself down a little bit and keep it in a pace to where everybody's still working and it's not really anything crazy going on. But yeah, it's usually the same people, almost always. I got 4 guys who's rocked with me since my first fight all the way to my last.
One of the things I was thinking while you were talking, Mike, is that because Gary and I were talking about this earlier too. I know we keep bringing some stuff up, but when we get waiting for you, we're kind of talking about some areas here. But one of the things that I was thinking is like normal people, so-called normal people that don't fight or not really gonna ever fight, they're just kind of training, is they don't really understand the level of intensity and why there's a different level of intensity when you have to get ready for a fight. So meaning that you may be going pretty hard, and to somebody else that's not experienced, maybe they think 100%, maybe you're going 60, 70%, but it's a level of intensity that those people aren't used to, because it's
Oh yeah, for sure.
looking for the kill now, right? You're looking for shots. If it's stand up, for sure, you're doing things differently, right? Those guys,
Yeah.
they don't know what that means, right? And that's one thing, just if they're getting ready for it. But I think the other thing they don't know, like when a normal person rolls with a person that competes or fights, I think they should also know, like, even when you guys aren't going hard, you're kind of going hard for them, right? If that makes sense. Like, and it doesn't mean
Yeah.
nothing bad for them. It's just they're not used to that. They're like, man, that guy was throwing me all around, and maybe they think you're being rude, or it's just different, right? Like, because
Well,
competing and playing around in the gym are two different things, right?
yeah. Well, as the sayings go, there's levels to it, and people don't realize it until they get the people don't realize it until they experience it. You know, people don't realize it. I've seen people go and work out for 6 months hard. They're sparring each other, doing all this, and in the game there with me, I'm going 30% and they're exhausted. And they're like, man, I'm really holding back a whole lot, but it's such a higher experience for them that they don't realize, like, even though you're working as hard as you possibly can, I'm only 30% in, 40% in, and like I said, people don't realize that until they experience it. And I mean, the only way to experience it is to experience it too, which sucks, but I mean, I guess you're signing up for it, like at the end of the day.
Yeah, well, they are, and that's, I think, one of the things that Gary and I were talking about as a coach too. Like, we have to low key keep an eye on certain people, right? Because like, we know, like, maybe they're not ready for that intensity or whatever. They may, maybe a little bit rough for them, but they may or may not want to say no because they don't want to feel like a wuss either, right? They're not gonna be like you're like, hey, you want to roll or this or that, and you're, again, like you said, you're not going hard. For you, it's nothing, but it's just that level of intensity, and that like, you're a different kind of athlete than like a dude off the street that well, like our buddy John Marshall, he's a lawyer. Like, you're a different kind of athlete
Yeah,
than, not that there's not jack lawyers, there are, and all that, but you know what I'm saying? Like, you're trying to you're grabbing bodies all day, trying to rip them to the ground and break bones. There's a different level of strength there,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that ties in with even with John Marshall, and specifically with him, he's starting to cross that line now, where people, you start off, everybody starts off green, no, everybody starts off, some people are meaner than others when they start off, some people aren't, but John is now getting to that threshold to where it's like, okay, where are we going with this? Because, at first it's all fun and games, but now you're starting to get a little bit of power to your punches. You're starting to get a little bit more, skill to where you're setting things up pretty good. You're landing. So then you got to have that gauging moment where you're like, where are we going with this? Are we going to pass this intensity level with each other, or are we going, or do we need to stay right here?
Yeah, and luckily, but a guy like him, I think he wants, I mean, he's
Oh,
fully
he's a competitor.
up to, right?
He's a competitor.
Yeah,
That's just his lifestyle, the way that he thinks. If you ever sit down and have a conversation with him about anything, it is a competition. I've ran with him, and he blows me out the water because it is a competition to him.
Yep, but then there's guys too, and this kind of, again, what I think Gary and I think of too is there's guys that think they're at that. Like, we know John's at that level, right? And somebody else could be like, well, I'm a lawyer too, I could be at that level, right? Or if they think that. We know those guys. There's certain guys like, no, like, you're not that kind of athlete. A punch to your head's not going to go quite as well, or a punch, what I mean? Even if we're not talking physically, maybe emotionally. Like, I know some people that just can't handle things like that emotionally, meaning that it's going to bruise their ego. Maybe they're never going to come back to the gym. I mean, there's a lot of weird stuff going on. And sometimes I don't know how much you guys see that when you're all on the mat together, right? Does that make sense, Gary? Like, I don't know. I don't think of it that way. And I know I've obviously been part of that way, but like, on the mat, a lot of times it's just like, I roll with who the coach tells me to roll with. Maybe I don't put a lot of thought into it, but it's kind of like, on the different level, I feel like I put a lot of thought into it and try to watch certain people, because I'm like, I'm afraid this guy will never come back. And I don't mean that for like a money reason by any means. I mean that for, like, I just know people. I know they love jujitsu, or they love stand-up, they love this sport, but they're not going to love it when things get real. That's the day they're going to go home,
Yeah.
And that's when it comes to coaching or running an academy, that's where the balancing act we have to play, right? Is knowing that there are guys like Mike, and Mike is coming in because he's planning on choking people unconscious, breaking faces, breaking bones. And then there's other people who come in and they just want to have a good time, get a little workout in, maybe learn some techniques that could translate into, hey, if something goes down on the street, my shit's covered. And we're playing a balancing act in the academy at all times, as far as like who rolls with who and like how much intensity to bring. It was yesterday, or maybe it was this morning. I don't know. Days have started to run together, but one of my individuals, I kind of turned the heat up on him a little bit. I made him uncomfortable, and it wasn't because I felt like he deserved anything, or it was like the lesson because he was being a mat bully. It's just he's grown enough that it's time to turn the heat up to find out. And that's the thing too, is like you got to find out where your guys are at. Before I wouldn't have maybe not went so hard or made him so uncomfortable, and now I'm turning the heat up on him because one, I have to do it for my own protection because he's getting too good to let him have as much rope, right? And so he starts hanging me if I give him too much rope. But two, like just to help him find out who he is, where he's at, and let him get comfortable in those uncomfortable spots. And so we're always on an edge trying to figure out how can we push our guys without pushing them out.
Mm-hmm.
It's a weird thought, huh? I'm sure, obviously, like Mike, this is for you to answer, but I think because you are an intellectual guy, and you already brought it up earlier on. You already think about that as you got older. You've changed some stuff too, but it's funny. I don't know how much you guys think about that when you're just rolling and stuff, but it's just funny because there's so many people there for different reasons, and there's some people at the gym. I'll be honest that I would not be friends with. They annoy the crap out of me, but I'm not there for that. I'm like, this jiu-jitsu means everything to their life. This moment right here, this hour that they're here means everything to them, and I'm happy that I get to bring that to them, and I can put up with whatever thing that wouldn't make me hang out with them socially, right, like but they're still my friend, and I love them, and that's why I'm doing this. I want something for them because we have that common bond, which is jiu-jitsu or fighting, whatever, and that's why we're friends. Some crazy stuff.
I would say at first when I first started training. And I would I would probably say not when I first started training, but when I first started realizing I was getting good, I didn't think about that at all. I'm like, well, I had that mentality to where it's like, well, if you quit, then it's because you're soft, like that's how. But now I have so much respect just for anybody who walks through any kind of gym's door and goes in there and gets hit in the face or goes in there and gets on the mats. I have so much respect for you just for getting off the couch and coming, because I realize how hard that is for some people. I realize that it's hard to get up every single day and go do anything physical, whether you're, out of shape or you're old or you have injuries or whatever. It's hard to just get up and come. So like, I have so much respect for anybody who just gets up and comes now. And I didn't have that before. I didn't think about things like that before. I was there for for myself for the most part. I was there. I was there to get work in, and sometimes, like I said, I've probably made people quit before. And now that's upsetting to me because I feel like, I potentially could have stunted somebody's growth or took away from somebody something that potentially is not only just good for, physical health, but also good for mental health, And it's not until I got older, to where I realized, like, man, you can't be that way. You can't. And if you are that way, you're an asshole. Because I was an asshole, and I know that, But it took me, I don't know. I would probably say it's more of something that I learned probably within like the last like 4 years of my life. Because before that, I was in that fighting, kill or be killed mindset, and now I think everybody should do it. That's what I think. I think everybody should get up at least one time a week and come to a jiu-jitsu class or a boxing class or whatever. And you don't got to get hit or you don't even got to train hard, but just to come because of how it'll make you feel about everything else.
Yeah, and I think we've all been that gym kind of new guy that was kind of an asshole at one point. If you competed, right? Like all of us that competed or did something, which is us, right? Like in different times, that was the thing at the beginning. You're training for something, so you didn't really care what else went on because you're training for something, right? And I think as I get older, I think this is what happens actually, is that's because that was our goal. And then especially as new people, we think that everybody shares in that same goal, meaning that they're all there to get as good as they can as a fighter, a competitor, help me get better because I'm going to help them get better and blah, 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 right? And that's kind of true to a degree, but really everybody has a different goal. Like that's our goal at a certain point. And then some other guy's goal is just to come there and and be a little active and roll around, do, what I mean? Not get hurt, pretend he's a boxer, feel good about himself. Right. And like, those are maybe at the beginning too, some people that you were like, we didn't respect as much because you're like, you're trying to be a fighter. I am a fighter, that's kind of the thing. Then later you're like, just like what you just said is like, no, man, I respect you. You're going out there, you're coming out of your comfort zone. You're just an office worker behind a desk that has no muscle tone. Now you're out here trying to defend yourself and your family and punch me in the face and you're getting hit hard. You're not pretend sparring. It's like, it's a different, you're like, man, that's awesome. I can't believe it. Or a guy I've had guys that are 450 pounds that, couldn't really do much.
Yeah.
But like that, instead of putting them down, I'm like, hell man, you're here. And then see with the beauty in that whole situation of how good they actually are doing, how good they're trying, and with the hurdles they were to overcome that situation to come, because probably they're going to be judged or this or that, right? And so now I look at all those things and think of, that's great, but we also can't expect everybody to think like that. That's how we think, even when we don't know. I think that's what I'm kind of thinking. Like, I find beauty in all that stuff, but never would I before. There's nothing wrong with that. Because I think when you come to a gym that says jujitsu on it, you come to a gym that says whatever on it, that's what you're there to do. You really are.
Yeah.
So there's no harm in saying I'm here to get better, and so are they. But then also, like, as you get older and you're confident in yourself and you have skill, then you can start looking at all those other things,
Yeah. I also think that came a lot when I started teaching people, because when I started teaching people, for one, I felt like I got exponentially better at everything that I did. Just maybe it's just from where I was thinking, putting a lot more mental into it to show people the stuff that I was doing. But I got exponentially better whenever I started teaching people. But when I started teaching people, I also, I dealt with people I dealt with, 120-pound, college student who just, wanted to work out a little bit, and then I've dealt with, a 40-year-old man who, wishes he would have started earlier and is just as game as a 30-year-old, 20-year-old person. And then I've dealt with people who, 50 years old who, who just, just thought they would try it out, and when you start really sitting down and talking to those people and, spending an hour, especially on one-on-ones, like when you're just spending an hour with a person, you really get to see who that person is. You get to see the person who's, you're going to push a little bit and they're going to quit. And you get to see the person who you can push to the brink and they'll just, you get to see the Bowmans, who just are just like they're going no matter what you do to them, no matter what, and there's, after you're experiencing those people and you're experiencing them, and then you sit down and you talk to them and you listen to them, and you realize that some people just come to the gym just simply because, they need to let off steam, or, they need to just talk to people, and my biggest issue with myself was that, and that's what I think about now, is that, like, there might have been somebody who just came to the gym one day just because they needed somebody to talk to. And I was an asshole because I was in that mind state of like, I'm here to work out and to kill people, and and it wasn't until I started talking and learning people, I mean, but when I first came to the gym, I was in there every day, but how much was I really socializing? How much was I like coming out to gym events, or going out to shoot pool with people afterwards or anything? I came in there 6 days a week. You would probably see me in there, but I would go in there, I would come in, I would do the drills, I would roll, I would hit the bags or whatever I needed to do, and then I was gone out of there, up until I like really started becoming friends with Hakeem and JB and all those guys, But before that, I was straight business, and
Yeah.
I potentially could have, made somebody quit or feel like they couldn't come in there and just do that, and it shouldn't be that way.
I know sometimes too, and like whether you're taking classes or whether you're coaching classes and instructing classes, you don't really sign on as, and I don't, this is something that I don't think people realize that happens in martial arts or combat sports. You don't sign up as a counselor, right? But there is a lot of counseling that happens in a boxing in a boxing ring. There's a lot of counseling that happens on a jiu-jitsu mat that you didn't really sign up to be a counselor, right? But we're helping people with emotions. And it's funny that you brought that up, because I was thinking about that as you were saying. Is like we didn't sign up for it. I wasn't planning on helping people with their emotional problems. And a lot of times, like, conversations on the mat lead to stuff going on at home. And I always said jujitsu is my exhale, right? All the stuff that is piled on me at work, is piled on me with family, is piled on with bills, is piled on with car troubles, washing machines not working, whatever it is, right? Like, I go to jujitsu, I get to exhale all that. And I couldn't do that if there wasn't somebody there to help me with that. And the transition from just a guy showing up, even when I wasn't coaching, the transition from a guy showing up to just murder people, right? Because I wanted to play the game of death, to the guy who was like, oh man, we are all here for our own issues, but we're not going to get anywhere if we can't solve our issues together. I don't know. There's a transition in student that happens also as coach too.
Yeah, Mike, I mean, you made me think the same thing. I actually get it now, to why the same reason that we, like, a coach would get mad at somebody for not understanding, like, why they need to go light with somebody, or why they need to do that, right? Like, you help me understand, like, really the reason is, just like you said, sometimes you don't understand that stuff till you start teaching and talking to people. If you just come to the gym, even as a person that's a hobbyist, not even a fighter, you come to the gym for an hour, your goal is to get jujitsu for an hour, and you don't have all the issues that we just said. Like, you're not coming in there to talk. You're like, I'm here for jujitsu. I'm getting in. I don't care about nobody's problems. I want to get jujitsu. I want to get the hell out of here, right? You're oblivious. And that actually is perfectly fine, because that's actually what you're paying to do. On the side, there's all these people with real lives and real emotions, right? That the coaches mostly have to deal with, because just like you said, we have a lot of one-on-one time with people, more so than the other guy that comes, trains, he rolls or spars, and he goes home. There's just no socializing, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's what guys like, I got 6 to 7 to do this. That's what I'm doing. I'm out, right?
Yeah.
And the rest of us are fielding texts and emails all day and asking personal questions. And initially somebody asks you about jujitsu, what do you think about this move? What do you think? But then the next thing, like, what do you think about blah, right? That has zero to do with that. And then we're involved in that,
Yeah. And I think it also comes in so, you guys are the role models, at the end of the day, everybody looks up to, their coaches, no matter what sport you're in. To a degree, you might hate your coach's guts. You know what I mean? Like, he might be that coach that screams at you, yells at you in your face, tells you suck and you need to do better and this is terrible. Or you might get a coach that's like you, Butch, who's like, cool, dude, whatever. But at the end of the day, we all look up to our coaches. So of course people will come to you for, just guidance too. And I've been a coach, and I've been coached, and I've had a million people that I've helped out or whatever, come up to me and or like we'd be hitting pads or something, and they'd be like, you never know what they're gonna say. They'd be like, oh, my wife just left me and I don't know what I'm gonna do when I leave here. And it's, I guess it kind of comes with just being a coach at that point, but it's partially, you're just role models to people. And that's why I had a real severe mental change when I started teaching people too, because it made me realize a lot more about how much people actually, especially like the younger guys like Zach and Marcus and all them, I see them guys, and I I immediately know that those kids look up to me to a degree. So I have to hold myself at a standard that I would be happy with for somebody to show my kid, you know?
Yep, which is awesome. I mean, it's crazy all the stuff that goes on, but all those things are perfect. And actually really in a roundabout way, like we went off in a different direction, but in a good way, because I think it's important that people understand why now that people have different goals, and how to really, even why the training goals are different, and why you have to coach somebody separately. I think that's what we've kind of been talking about now, is just, even besides training partners, but even because they have all different goals, that we're kind of coaching them in a different way, and we're a different kind of training partner to that person for those reasons, right? Like, so I guess in a weird way too, like, it's good for other people to hear, I guess is what my point is that if you can understand why those things are, like, I get that maybe you're just there for jujitsu, and I get it, still be there for jujitsu, but know that you don't need to be going 100% and break somebody's arm. That, hey, like, maybe you can let that guy sweep you, maybe you can let that guy kind of win, because that means something for him. And yeah, that sucks, maybe you're not going to get a good round this time, but then figure out a way to make it a better thing, or take joy in the fact that you helped with this thing, right? And then do whatever you have to do on the side. So just be a good training partner to each person, and that's originally what we were saying. How do you be a good training partner to everybody? Like, everybody's got different goals. If you can kind of figure those out, then you can be the best training partner, right? You can just be like, all right. And don't shame somebody. Like, I know some guys that they can barely make it to the gym, right? Like, they're terrible shape. It's like, yeah, just go with them and let them do what they're going to do, like, be that person that lets them have a good workout, that this made them feel good about coming, and maybe they'll stick with it, right?
Yeah.
Something like that.
And I think people don't realize, especially younger people who are just starting to train, who are just, or just starting to get good, they don't realize that the whole iron sharpen iron thing is like the most legitimate thing in the world, because, if you're 100% all the time, you can kick everybody's ass in the room. You kick my ass, it doesn't matter. If you kick my ass 1,000,000 times in the gym, I'm still going to go home and sleep at night. And it doesn't make me feel like you're any better, but it might make me feel like I shouldn't keep going with you. And regardless, everybody has something that they bring to the table. Everybody has something that they bring to the table, and you can learn from every single person. So the best thing that you could do is be a great training partner, so that way your training partners continue to come, and that way your training partners get better, because them getting better is eventually going to elevate you as well.
So Gary, speaking on your side, how do you pick a good training partner at this point? And let's say two different ways. One, let's start with this one because it's closer to what Mike's talking about too. But let's say you do the IBJJF Masters Division this year. Let's say you do. So you're going to need certain training partners for that. So you're going to pick them a different way. But then, so after that, how you would pick one just to get better as a gym owner that maybe doesn't have somebody at his level that he can, that's going to make him that much better, which kind of goes hand in hand with the competitors. If you might have to travel some, so that's a different thing. But what would you do at your gym to make you better with what you got?
So as far as what I do at the gym to make myself better, and I would say this is in non-competition times, right? And kind of like out of fight camp kind of idea, is lots of drills. Maybe look at stuff that I need to work on, as far as like right now it's like the leg lock game I don't know anything about. I need to immerse myself into that, especially for no-gi, if I'm thinking about any kind of no-gi stuff. But immerse myself in all of the stuff that I don't really know about. And when I'm with guys that are lesser level than me, or maybe not at a skill level as I am, which at my gym is pretty much everybody. I'm the instructor there. What I'll do is I put myself in compromised situations and try and find ways out of it. So I will let myself get into armbar spider web where I'm kind of dead to rights, and find a way out of it. If I get tapped, then I get tapped, and that's life. We all get tapped. And if you're not getting tapped, and Gordon Ryan even talks about it, he's like, I get tapped all the time. And he's the best guy in the world right now. So how does he get tapped all the time? Well, he's putting himself in the worst possible position and then trying to find the combination to get out of it. And so I try and do that as much as possible.
I like to see those guys that's tapping Gordon Ryan out in the gym.
But like it's not them getting there on their own. He helps them get there, right?
Oh, I'm sure.
And so it's the same. I do the same thing. Like I will allow myself to be swept. I'll get mounted. Somebody has a hand in the collar and they're deep and they're starting to set the second hand in for a cross collar choke, and now I start. That's where my game begins. Or they'll mount me, I'll roll to my side and allow them to get into an armbar modified mount setup, and that's where I start. And like I said before, like some of my partners, as we go on, I'm like, oh man, I can't let them get that far into this move anymore.
Yeah, you never let me get no damn armbar position. It's bullshit. Is what it is. Why can't I get my armbar position, Gary? Why can't you start there with me? Because I be working so hard So hard, Gary. You start an armbar position with me for now on, please.
I will. I promise to at least give you one, but you can't
Yeah.
smile when you submit me.
Oh man.
But then as far as like being a competitor and it's time to get ready for a big competition, you have to find somebody who matches you and pushes you, because now I need something closer to a real match now. It can't be me allowing things to happen, allowing passes to happen. I've already trained all that stuff. I've already trained my escapes. Now I need to train my attacks, and not only train my attacks, but at a higher level against higher competition to feel the same resistance that I'm feeling, because it's going to be different when I get into a war with somebody who's 220 pounds and trying to choke me and is the brown belt as well. And he doesn't care that I had students to teach this week and that I had to go easy with them or whatever. They're not going to care. They're there to choke me, and that's their job, and it's my job to choke them. And so in the lead up to competition, I need to find real competition who's going to hurt me and push me the way I can hurt and push people back, right? And so that's what I'm looking for at that point. And a lot of times that does mean that I'm going to have to travel, and I'm going to have to go out of my academy or invite people into my academy to get that training.
I mean, makes a lot of sense, obviously. So at those points, here's one thing, because this is, and Gary, you're in a unique situation where you're competing and still coaching a little bit. Should we tell people to get out of your way? Is that the coach's problem? Because you're not thinking of it, right? When you're getting ready, it's kind of the thing is like, all right, if you agree to this sparring round, stand up MMA, jiu-jitsu, right? It's okay. Like, I'm getting ready for something. You should know better, right? Is that what you think at that time? Unfortunately.
Yeah.
So
And
on the other side, though, those people need to be aware. Like, that's what I think. It's like sometimes I think people just need to know. You got to know. There should be some common sense. Like, we can't protect you always, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it's expectations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody needs, and we kind of covered this the last time when we was talking about communication, and it's not, communication with your wife is great because then she doesn't get upset about stuff, but communication with your students, training partners, and hopefully they all know, like, and I'll try and talk about it, like, hey, I'm ramping up for a competition, so things are going to be a little more real. I'm not going to give as much slack, and things are going to be a little tougher. And if you don't want to roll with me, that's okay. I'm not going to be offended, and that's fine. And I don't think of any less of anybody who doesn't want to roll, but I need to do this for me, and I want to represent the best me in competition that I can.
Makes sense. Which again, people somewhat need to know, which maybe this podcast is good for, is that, and not that you guys are going to hurt them either. That's the other thing that we're not saying. It's just that, listen, if you roll and then you're offended or you're beat up for 2 weeks because you rolled somebody and they went kind of hard, or you roll, somebody sparred a little bit harder with you. Again, that does suck, and I wish it didn't happen. But that's what I'm just saying, that when you roll with somebody that's getting ready for something, some people need to have some common sense. Is this guy's getting ready for something? He can't dumb it down forever because now I'm getting in his way, kind of deal, right? And that's the other. I just wish other people knew that, and I think they do to a degree, like most of the time, right? It's just that some people don't. You know what I'm saying? But it's okay, because like, we're never mad at somebody that goes too hard. I'm not gonna say never. I guess there's a fine line of if somebody goes with like a fight, or somebody goes hard and they go too hard. Yes, there's a fine line. But at the same time, always I'm like, people, if you're gonna whine to me for the next week that your ribs hurt because somebody smacked you, like, I'm gonna just shoot myself right now, because you should have known better. Like, what are you doing right now? What are you doing?
Well, at the end of the day, it's all I mean, when you're playing the game of punch face, you kind of expect to get punched, and it's shitty. There are people who are, just not very nice people, and they will hurt you. Like, they will 100%. So if I get but also, if I stick my hand in fire one time, I'm not gonna keep sticking my hand in that fire. I see people all the time go with a person, and it's like, man, they're smashing each other right now, and then they'll sit down and be like, man, that was so hard. And I'm like, yeah, looked hard, look real hard. And then, then like they'll complain about it for a week, and then next week they jump right back up to go with that person. And it's like, well, what are you doing at that point? Because like,
Yeah.
I mean, and sometimes, we've all been that guy that had to cash somebody's check too, because sometimes they calm people down. You know, I've seen people who, you know, just going and going and going and going hard, and then it's like, okay, well, I can only let you go hard on me so long before I have to go whack hard with you,
Yeah.
And I think some people don't understand that they're going hard too, like Jeremy. Jeremy's a perfect person for that. He has one way of going, no matter what. If he's out of shape, in shape, doesn't matter. If you spar Jeremy, when you spar him, he is going to go the way that he knows how, which is forward, and he's going to try to go through you, you know? So but if you know that beforehand,
Yeah.
why would you ever go get up and go with him if you're not prepared for that?
No, there's some people though too. That's for what you're saying is that if somebody knows that and they repeatedly go back, like you said, like next week they're back at a certain point, that's when, as coaches or friends or training partners, you're like, okay. I mean, they know. This is the third time. I mean, they know.
You're doing this to yourself at that point.
Yeah, and I think that's fine too, right? It's like there's a certain level of protection that we try to keep people out of harm's way, even when, and this is another thing we kind of mentioned too earlier, is that off camera, is that sometimes when we're talking about people just like they don't want to be a pussy, right? They're gonna say yes no matter what. But the other times too, like they look like they thoroughly enjoyed everything. They're smiling, they're happy, they're telling you did a great job, the great job of kicking my ass. I'm bleeding, I'm knocked out. Like, you're just awesome. And they brag about it. But truthfully, they don't really like, they're not at that level still, even though they said all that. And they did truly enjoy it. They're only going to enjoy it for a, very rarely, once
Yeah,
a month, right? There's
yeah,
there's still levels. But like you said, like one's a level I try to keep people, as a coach and as a friend. And then the other is that I know, okay, you decided to go hard today. That's fine. Like, and I'm okay with them bitching and then me telling them like, hey, quit bitching. You knew what you're doing. Right. Like,
yeah.
it's okay.
I tell people like this, man, and I mean, and I feel this wholeheartedly. If you put on gloves and you stand up across from me, I already don't think you're a pussy. Regardless if we go super soft with each other and it's super playful, or if it's really intense and we go hard on each other. The moment that you get up and you say, "Hey, Mike, I want to do this with you," I immediately know you're not a pussy. So don't ever think that, if you've ever done that, even if it's just one time, even if it's just one time, I just want to feel what it's like. I just want to, whatever. Even if it's just one time, I automatically don't think you're pussy, because I mean, you got the balls to get up there and get punched in the face by somebody. You're not a pussy. You're not. You're not. So don't feel that way. It's not for everybody. It's really not. I've seen people, who you could beat them to their black and blue, and and they be completely fine. And then I've seen people, you touch them a little bit and it's like the worst thing that ever happened in the world. But either way, you still got up and did it. So for me, at least, that's how I feel, and maybe not everybody feels that way, but I
It
think as
is.
soon as you lace up, you're not a pussy to me.
It's that Roosevelt quote, it is not the critic that matters, it's the man in the arena, right? And so like that's a real thing. It takes a lot of courage and just like you said, just to lace the gloves up and exchange it all. So I agree at 100.
Yeah. And I think too, Mike, to give you credit, another thing that you said, even that it's something we all know, is that there is levels of this, right? There's levels to this. And that goes for levels in how we train, and then levels of training partners you need to get, levels of how hard you're going to train, right? So you need to know those things and who you're getting with. And I guess, if I was going to try to put a bow on anything that we're talking about, is I think there has to be some personal awareness of all these things. Like, you need to, even though you're just showing up for jiu-jitsu, maybe you're going to roll with everybody. That's fine. There's all those are different levels, right? So know the people that you're rolling with, how you can help them, how you can help them help you, right? And then what you're getting yourself into also, right? There's going to be certain people that are going to hurt hard at certain times. That don't mean that they're mad at you that month or that day or that week, right? There's a reason, right? And that's cool too. And And also, like Gary said, there should be communication on both sides too. Like that's awesome if every time you can say, I'm getting ready for a competition, right? Or I'm getting ready for a fight. But we all know if you say that once or twice or a couple weeks in a row, eventually you're not going to say that anymore and everybody's going to forget. And that's okay. Like, so that's where I think the personal awareness has to come into some degree, right? Because you can't always communicate to everybody, hey, I'm getting up, sorry, like, you know, should have known. Like, we can't get to everybody, even though we try to, and somebody should know. Okay. And that doesn't mean like it's going to be the worst thing ever. I'm just saying that like people need to just know, because I should try to help you or get out of your way. That's okay too, right? It's fine. Just like Gary said, it's okay. There's not an ego thing. I mean, training's training if we're all looking at the same, and if we all realize that we don't have the same goals, that's okay too, right? Because that way you don't have to make, like, if you're a stone cold hard fighter, you don't want those people in your way anyway, right? Like you ain't got time for that, because it's not going to end the way you want, right? You don't got time
Not at
for that.
all.
It's
You
better.
don't gain anything from it.
Yeah,
Think-
yeah. So, and that is completely fine. That's the other thing. And it really truly is. There's nothing wrong with that. Doesn't mean that nobody has to take an ego hit from it at all.
No.
It's tough.
I very seldomly even asked to spar, like as far as like, hey, I need to spar outside of maybe Hakim. I really don't ask to spar anybody, and a couple boxers that I know that are really good boxers. Outside of them, I mean, I gain stuff from it because, you know, I do like bodies, and you know, I like to show people if I do something really well and you want to learn how, I like that. And I like and you know, I work on my own stuff whenever I'm going with people who are, you know, but whenever I'm in a fight, like whenever I've got a fight coming up, like I've already learned what I'm going to learn for this fight. Now I'm doing it for a different reason. I'm not doing it to pick up new skills or anything. So at that point, you know, it kind of shifts a little bit as far as me. I really, if I could literally just go off into the woods with like 5 people, I would be much more happy to do that than to be around. So I think a lot of times people think they get in there with a person like, you know, like you, Butch, and they think, oh, well, Butch tried to kill me or whatever, you know, he was working super hard that day, or even me, you know, and people don't realize like I don't gain anything from that. Like, because Butch, you can smoke almost everybody, you know, not everybody, but like everybody in our gym, you could just, if you really wanted to, you could just get them out of there in 2 seconds. But what do you gain from that? You know what?
Yeah, but the other thing people got to realize too, when I'm thinking, is that people forget about when we're talking about like normal people just trying to realize what it's like to be a fighter. Like at certain points when competitors are getting ready for fights, like the way that you compete or fight is the way you train, right? Like, so we said, like, there's a point, Gary he makes a distinction, right? There's a time where he's working on getting out of stuff, right? And obviously that's the same for you, Mike. Like there's a time when you're working on skills, you're working on defense, offense, certain combos, certain moves, certain whatever. But then there's a time that's over. So now the time it's 100% for timing and for execution.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't do those two things without going at a certain level, right? So
Yeah.
that's why it's different, because now if you go in and you don't put all your weight on somebody, you don't, you know, do this, you don't do that, potentially that's how you could fight, because at some point it's muscle memory when you actually fight. That's the part people don't understand. If Mike's thinking, all right, man, he just do this, here's my combination, and he makes that whole thought through his head, it's already 10 moves beyond. Mike's just got to go, bam, it's over, right? So that all comes through repetition and timing, you know. It's hard for people that don't compete to understand, right? And I guess as knowing a little bit of both, that's what I'm trying to understand. Like for people, like that's why we try to protect somebody. It's not because we think somebody's a wimp or they're going to get hurt, but we kind of do. It's like it's not because that person's way better than you. They're training at now in a level of intensity that you don't know, right? That's all.
Yeah. And it's not even when I pick up the pace with people or anything, like whenever I have a fight coming up, like an actual fight coming up, it's not with the intention, it's not malicious, it's not with the intent to hurt you, but I have to train in a different way now. I'm not training to pick up new skills or to see if this works. Now my objective in my mind is I'm training to win. period. And however I have to win is how I'm training. So it's a double-edged sword, because you got people who don't understand that. And say for instance, I plan to be a counter fighter for the next fight, and then all of a sudden, like, you're used to me going one way and playing around and doing this, and then all of a sudden you get in there with me, and it's like every time that you miss, I'm punish you for it, and it's not that I'm trying to do it to hurt you, but now I have to train the way that I'm training. I have to train with the objective in mind at the entire time is to win.
Gary, that's perfect, Mike, and that's what I'm thinking. Gary, launch you, because you're the most intellectual one of all three of us, right?
For sure.
Let's put a bow on this, because I think like I said, I think that we need to understand there's levels of this fighting thing, this competing thing, this jiu-jitsu thing, this whatever hobby boxing thing. There's levels to it, right? People have different goals. People have different issues. We're taking care of them different ways as training partners, as coaches. How does everybody take all that information, which is a lot, and apply it to themselves, right?
Yeah, I think it is a lot of information to take in, but to boil it all down, I think, one, know what you're coming in for. Because if you're confused about what you're there for, it's going to make figuring out how to train with different training partners, right? And how to be a good training partner. If you're there as a hobbyist, know that you don't plan on competing. So why are you going to train like you're trying to compete? So know who you are, know what you want out of jiu-jitsu or boxing, or maybe I just want to hit some mitts and get some frustration gone, and that's fine. And maybe I want to get ready to go and make a run at IBJJF Worlds or Pan Ams or whatever it is. Both of those are fine, but you got to know who you are and be honest about it with yourself and your training partners. And then when it comes to being a good training partner for other people, I think listen, know what your level is, and it's easy to know who you are. I've always said this: we can show up in jiu-jitsu and nobody know each other, and there's 100 of us. Everybody can drop their belts at the door. We'll roll for an hour, and we know where we all stand on the wall at the end of the day. And once you know who you're rolling with after a couple minutes, roll respectfully, roll the way that you can roll and still be safe with them. And it's a little bit harder for new white belts coming in, but you shouldn't have any ego. Don't come in with any ego. Roll to learn as a white belt, and then you're continuing that learning as you go on through jiu-jitsu on the way to black belt. But you also want to roll to teach, and you're teaching, proper mat etiquette and proper boxing etiquette would be the same. So you want to compete at the skill level that you're with.
Well, that sounds good. Mike, got anything to finish that up with? That's very professional, Gary.
Yeah, he said it so professionally and so fluidly. Like it's like you had it written down there or something, man. I don't think there's anything that I can say past that.
We were both speechless at the end. We're like, shit, I don't know what to say.
I was waiting on him to say something. I was like, he's got to have something. He's got to have, because I don't have anything. That was so beautiful.
Well, thank you, Mike. Congratulations on the new job.
Appreciate it.
I'm excited for you, man. And we do have to wrap things up. I think on the 26th, June 26th, we're going to have the submission only at Nelsonville, Ohio. So anybody that can make it out there. We also started a new Facebook page. So if you're hearing this, we're going to be on, hopefully soon, we will be on Spotify and a couple of different podcast places. I'm trying to get that set up. So hopefully it'll start looking a little more professional. We'll try and make these every Sunday. If you know somebody who wants to be on, give me a message. You can shoot me an email. Find me on Facebook. Find Butch on Facebook. Mike, it was a pleasure having you on here, brother, and we love you.
Appreciate you guys. Love you both. Would love to come back at any time. You guys just let me know.
How can people find you, Mike, on your social media?
Mike doesn't want to be found right now.
All right, perfect. Magneto, Magic Mike's disappearing.
Yeah, just for a little while.
Okay. All right, guys. We'll see you again soon. I appreciate
it.
Later.
Good.